I am so excited to talk to you today about raising emotionally healthy kids in a big family, part 2 of a 3-part series I'm doing this week. Hello, my name is Tara. I'm a Christian wife, homeschool mom of 10, almost 11 children. And I have had to walk through this of how to figure out how to walk with my children to help them understand their big emotions, how to process them, manage them in a constructive and safe way. And things got really real when we had like 4 under 4, and it moved past just, keeping the kids alive and clean and fed, and then into like more of an emotional realm of teaching them how to be little humans and not just giving into their impulses, because they started to really interact when they moved beyond side by side play and started to have more dynamic play, and then there would be conflicts that would erupt. I mean, people meet my family and I hear all the time like, oh, Tara, your kids are so well behaved. And I mean, I super appreciate the compliment. The reality is, if you spend the day with me, you're going to find out pretty quickly that my kids are just as human as anybody else. Like, homeschooling isn't some kind of silver bullet to having super awesome, well-behaved children, though I do think there are some social advantages to raising them in a home environment. That's another talk for another time. That being said, because we do homeschool and we're home all the time, my kids now range, oldest is almost 17, youngest is 2, having a baby in 6 weeks. We deal with conflict all the time. And it's actually a really great opportunity because we are at home. We can't just like clock out at 3 o'clock when school's over or 5 o'clock when the shift is over. We just go home and not deal with our problems. We live together. So it's a really great incentive to actually learn these skills that I wasn't trained in them. This isn't something, my parents grew up teaching me or I learned in school. So I figured out in the fire of life, and my heart in the group that I'm part of, which you'll see the link below if you're not part of it already, Big Family Moms, is to help other big family moms like myself who are struggling with, like, how do you raise emotionally healthy children, especially in this day and age, especially in the big family, and how we can do that, because I had to walk it out. I'm going to share my stuff with you this week. So real quick, just so you know, there is a giveaway happening this week only in the group. You can, if you're in the group, you can see the links above. You can actually win one of my free courses on home organization. So it's a declutter for Christmas, a challenge that I'm doing next week, little 5-part thing. If that's something that resonates with you, you're like, yes, I totally want to get my house ready so we don't just get stuff on top of our stuff, then go ahead, check that out in the group. Let's get into it. So conflict happens in every family, Christian family, big family, small family, right? Where there are people, there will be conflict. I talked in part 1 on Monday about just setting the foundation through language and through coming alongside your children with guided support, and how to set the stage for emotionally healthy children. So touched on that, and I'm going to build on that a little bit more. So what do you do when they start to get, interacting, like I said, like any normal people, start to have conflict? So I've got a couple strategies that I've developed by the grace of God, and they work really well in my family. So I'm so happy to share them with you today. So what I've done is developed like a biblical conflict resolution model that's based out of Matthew 18, if you're familiar with that, where you first go to your brother in private to deal with something rather than just having like a big explosive confrontation. And then first go to them before you then go to any kind of other authority and appropriate authority, which in the context of the home would be mom or dad. And I'm stay-at-home full-time mom, so most of the time it falls to me to act like, the judge in sort of deciding what happened, how we're going to move forward. So, and I'll get into that more tomorrow, how I really walk it out as like a good judge playing the role of the judge in our family. But for today, I'll just tell you the first strategy before we even get there. I have built this out of Matthew 18, and it looks like this. We call it step 1, step 2. It's that simple. My kids hear it all the time, every day. And I'll say, did you do step 1, step 2? Which they now know what that means, but I'll unpack it for you because you may not have heard that before. So if our children believe, and this would be like over the age of about by 6, when they have the language and the cognitive skills. I'm talking about average healthy children, not somebody who maybe is dealing with other issues like on the spectrum or something, which is another talk. So they know that step 1, step 2 means this. If they believe that one of the other children is in fact breaking one of our family rules, whatever it is, right, taking somebody's stuff or, butting ahead in your turn, or very common things, then they have been instructed and taught, and I affirm it quite frequently, to do step 1 before they jump to step 2. Step 1 is literally just going to the other person calmly to say this, and this is the script. Mommy and daddy said XYZ rule. Will you obey? And that's it. They just have to fill in the blank. Daddy and mommy said, or if they're little, or mom and dad said, this is the rule. Will you obey? There's a couple things happening in this sentence. That's just step 1. It's super simple. Little children as young as like 6 years old can practice this one. It's just simple memorization. It protects them from seeking instant revenge. which is our human nature, right? We immediately want justice, and we're just like, you took my toy? Well, then I'm going to take your toy, and I'm going to punch you to boot, right? Like, that's just human nature. And some kids are more, just some people are given more to hot revenge. Some people are given more to cold revenge. But either way, we seek our revenge to get justice. Doing step one instantly protects them from immediately giving into that impulse. So at least gives them a strategy, right? Like a channel to direct all of their feelings, their very valid feelings. It gives them somewhere for all that to go. Otherwise, it's just going to, either they're going to hold it in, it'll come out later, or they're going to blast it out right then and there, sort of depending on their personality style. So daddy and mommy said, fill in the blank rule, will you obey? And the second part of this is so key, is that because it's phrased as a question, it engages the other person's mind in a very different way than if they had just been given a command, especially a command by a sibling, which usually most siblings don't take well to being ordered around by other siblings. You may or may not have noticed that if you have more than one child. So they're appealing to the parent's authority, which would be a proper authority in the jurisdiction of the home. It's just like a friendly reminder, hey, there's a rule. I think you're breaking it. Will you obey? It's a very gracious way of also giving them like a chance to change their direction, right? Change their trajectory before they get in trouble, because they most certainly, well, there will be some kind of, escalation that's going to happen if they don't. So we tell our kids, listen, if the other child is now ignoring you at this point, they don't answer, and you really believe they heard you, then you can go to step two, which is come to mom or dad, whoever's in charge at the moment. Most of the time it's me. So they come step two to mom and dad. And then I always ask them, did you do step one? Because sometimes they're like, yeah, I did. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. What did it sound like? And I get them to repeat to me to make sure, because sometimes they think they did step one, but really they did like a total sidestep. And they'll be like, well, I told them to give me back my toy. And I was like, that doesn't sound like step one. That sounds like you were just ordering him around. I get it, but that's not step one. So then I'll say, well, go back, do step one, the way I've been instructed, because it's super simple, and then come back to me if you need to. It's time for step two. And, I'd say half the time that resolves the issue right there. Like, they just resolve the conflict, which is so great. I've empowered my children to deal with things themselves. So they don't feel like they always have to go running to mommy and daddy and become like chronic whiners who can't deal with their problems as adults, because they're just like, somebody solve the problem. We know adults who are like this, right? They have no functional ability to deal with conflict. So they either gossip about it, and they attack the other person, or they shut down. We've all got coping mechanisms. But this is actually, in my opinion and observation, one of the ways that happens in the early years. And as parents, we can actually avoid that with some simple intentional training in the early years. So, like I said, half the time that resolves a problem right there. I don't even get a step two. But if step two does happen, it looks like this. Then I say, okay, well, let's tell me the story. I'm listening. And they tell me real quick what happened. And they're calming down already because they're being heard. I'm validating that something happened, I care, and I'm going to help you. Without even saying it like I did in part one, they know, because we built that foundation of trust, that I care, I'll stop what I'm doing. Or if I'm like really in the middle of something, I'll say, listen, I just need 5 minutes. You could just go sit down and I will, like, you're next, right? Get in the queue. Because I have, almost 11 children. That happens sometimes. And of course, if it's an emergency, we don't do step one, step two at all. Obviously, that's a medical situation probably at that point. So then we talk. I listen. I pull in the other party. And then I play judge, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow more specifically, of how I really walk that out. And it's really important that I always ask them, what did it sound like? Because sometimes they think they did step one well, calmly, according to the script, but they really didn't. And it's important that it be that way, because there's all kinds of sort of like ethical, psychological, and even spiritual things loaded in that one sentence. Daddy and mommy said the rule. Will you obey? He showed me to do it from the scriptures, because this is biblical confrontation, literally 101. Go to your brother in private, talk to them, like appeal to them, because you care about them. You actually are trying to, appeal that they would move away from the trajectory they're on, instead of just turning into a tattletale and be like, busted, I'm telling mom, and taking pleasure in their almost downfall. So we avoid all kinds of problems, and we keep a healthier dynamic between our children. I'm talking as young as 6 years old. When they start to get older, and we're moving them towards even being able to empathize with people. Because like I talked about on Monday, my understanding of an emotionally healthy adult is someone who has the ability to show empathy, right? They can understand how other people feel, and they can engage in productive, constructive conflict resolution. Those two things are the markers of an emotionally healthy adult. And there's more to it, but for me, those are the big ones. If you don't have those, it doesn't really qualify as emotionally healthy. There's definitely room to improve. So if everybody's on overload though, and we can't even do step 2 because the person comes to me and they're just a sobbing mess, their emotions are flying on high, we really can't do step 2 yet. It's time to calm down first, right? I'm going to be reacting to all this like screaming in my face, and I might be tempted as a mom just to make a quick judgment and be like, just give him back his toy. And that's not really good justice, is it? Because I'm not hearing it out. I'm not being a good, fair judge and a ruler in the kingdom of my own home. Talk about that more tomorrow. So what I do if everybody's on overload is we need to calm down. I talked about this a little bit in part 1. What that looks like, real kids who are a little bit like 4 and up, maybe even 3 and up, because we don't do step 1 then. But I really am just like, hey, you're mad. They're like, yes, I will help you calm down. I say, go lie down on the couch. And maybe I'll come over 3-4 minutes, rub their back a little bit, and literally just give them some space and some grace to calm down. Because until they calm down, they cannot engage their frontal cortex and make any kind of rational thought, right? It's pure emotion, it's pure adrenaline, and we're not thinking, and we're not really able to have constructive conflict resolution. Honestly, they're hardly even able to talk, right? When they're that worked up. I know. I mean, we've all done it, right? We're like, I can't even think, I'm so mad. And I'm just lashing out and making instant reactionary decisions. And kids are like that too, because they're just little people. So that's what I do when they're having all their big feelings. It's time for step 1, step 2, because it's a conflict situation. But before we can do that, we've all got to calm down. So I just give them a space. If they're a little bit older and I trust them, I'll send them to their room. Again, not as a punishment, just, hey, why don't you go lie down on your bed, take a couple minutes. And when you feel like you're more calmed down, come and talk to me. We'll take it from there. And because I built that trust over time, they know mom will. I'm not just blowing them off or just making an instant reactionary, non-calm decision myself. So those are just some real quick things that I want to share with you of how I do it in my own big family, helping the kids develop emotional health in kind of the early years, but a little bit past maybe about 6 years old, when step 1, step 2 works. I want to say like a charm. It's not a charm. It's not hocus pocus. It's biblically based. It's kind of common sense. And once you've got a system, a strategy in place, kids get used to it. It gets so much easier. Even just the fact that they hear, hey, okay, let's do step 1, step 2, they already start to calm down because they know that at the end of this, justice will be done. Mom will be fair. And they're going to be okay, right? It's that guided support I talked about in part 1. It's just leveled up now to a little bit more of a mentally and relationally mature level. That's all. And it carries right into the teen years because that's the foundation that we built. So I hope this blessed you today. If you're struggling with this though, and you're like, oh, Tara, this is great, but like, could you please keep going? Listen, I keep these lives to about 15 minutes tops because we're all busy moms. I'm a busy mom, and this is where I fit it in the day. But I would love to help you more at this because I know what it's like to be yelling at your kids and crying in the bathroom because like, what kind of a mom am I becoming? I didn't have these strategies at the beginning of my motherhood journey. So if you're really struggling with keeping calm, you're struggling with communicating with your kids, and you can see the effects it's having, you're scared of the people they're going to become because you're doing it to them and you have no clue what you're doing. I've put together a mini course that's really going to dive into this way more time than I have right now to really get into how you can walk alongside your children, teaching them good, healthy boundaries for themselves, for others, how to have better communication in your big family. So that's resonating with you. The link is in the description of this video. Feel free to go check it out. It is there to support you as a mom, 3+ kids, or even if you don't have 3+ kids, this is just like reality, right? With kids of how we can help them have good, healthy boundaries, good, healthy communication, and become more emotionally healthy people, because that's where this is all going. We are raising adults. So like I said, if you're struggling with self-control and you're shocking yourself at how easily you yell at your kids, I've done it. Literally, I wrote a blog a couple weeks ago about how one of my worst mom moments, it's still hard for me to even talk about it right now, was when I yelled so hard that I made one of my kids cry. And he's not really a crier. So I know I had way gone over the line. So with all grace and empathy, do I share how I got from where I was to where I am today to help equip you, shave all kinds of time off your own stressful struggle, your learning curve as a mom, and I get it. So that's there for you. Thank you for connecting with me today. It was so good to be here with you. Let me know in the comments if you have any other specific questions on raising emotionally healthy children, anything else I can come alongside you with. I am honored to do that. So God bless you today, and I'll